Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing another episode. We've got here part 190 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people will be making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we're going to be finishing off the other half of the Poison Dart Frog pack that shows off all the different species of dart frogs. We're thinking about doing it in one episode, but it's just a dart frog episode is probably not the best. But I've got a couple really cool animals as well at the end. We've got a couple of species of ungulates, and then we've got, as you saw on the thumbnail, we've got a subspecies of lion, which we always like to talk about. So we're going to be starting off with the rest of the Poison Dart Frog pack. We've got here, this is done by Lorby and Tosco DS. We're having a look at the Sara Poison Dart Frog. So let's have a look at that on the exhibit camera. Let's see if we can find one in the light. We always like to find them in the light. There's one in the light. So the Sara Poison Dart Frog, Ranthomeira saranensis, or the Sara Poison Frog. These guys are a species of poison dart frog found in the Amazonian rainforests of northern Bolivia, so around the Pando department. It's also found in westmost Brazil and eastern Peru. So scientists gave it the Latin name Sarensis because it was found at the place it was formerly observed in the Sierra de Sierra. So these guys are the adult male frog typically is about 15 to 17 millimeters long and snout to vent length. So that's right to the tip of the nose to the cloaca at the back here. So about 15 to 17 millimeters, or about just under 2 centimeters. This species also has a number of quite distinct color morphs, as you saw before. As you can see, there was kind of like a yellowish one and a reddish one, and all the different colorations there. The frogs live in the mountains that have red skin on their backs with turquoise green coloration. The bellies as well are blue-green with one red patch each, and also got this turquoise kind of color on their limbs. And frogs of other parts of their range also have like yellow stripes, as you kind of see going on here. So there's a couple with yellow stripes. Let's have a look there. And all of these frogs, like other species, have discs on their toes to allow them to climb. So like most species within their genus, they are a mildly toxic species of dart frog, with its skin secreting small amounts of plumatoxins that coat the frog, and this can cause pain and mild muscle spasms if the frog is handled carelessly. And the symptoms may be more severe if the frog is ingested, but unlike the phylobates and the Uophagia species, these guys are actually relatively mild compared to those kind of species. As a result, these species tend to rely more on agility and speed and ability to take shelter rather than their poison. But very interesting, like most other species, they do lose their poison in captivity, and the reason for this loss is thought to be the removal of the animals they get the toxin from, so the invertebrates that they eat that they get the toxin from, potentially like mylid beetles, things like that. That's where they get their toxins, and because we don't feed that in captivity, they don't get their toxins. So it's cool that we can have them in captivity and not worry about getting killed by touching them. But in terms of its habitat, the diurnal frog lives in secondary rainforest, where it's been observed between 200 and 1,560 meters above sea level. And the frogs have been found in some plantations that grow less intensive crops, such as coffee, but they do not live in farms with densely packed monoculture. So they're a little bit more forgiving in terms of habitat change and things like that. So in terms of their life cycle, only the male frog really takes care of their young. And after the eggs hatch, the male frog carries the tadpole to different pools of water inside like bamboo plants and other things like that. The tadpoles eat what they find, such as mosquito larvae. And in terms of conservation, they are luckily considered a species of least concern because of their large range. What threats it face comes from capture of the international pet trade, which impacts most species of dart frog, which can render the species and some of its colour morphs locally extinct. The scientists recommend area-specific measures against their capture for this reason, and they also face some threat from habitat loss with habitat degradation in favour of agriculture. But luckily there are quite a few protected areas within their range that they can survive in, so it's not too much a concern. But yeah, another really, really cool species, so let's have a look at we'll have a look at the thing, see if there's any other information that we missed out on. We missed that, 2 centimeters long, hard to spot. Yeah, yeah, we already mentioned that. Alright, so that is the Sara poison frog. Next up, we have got the Splashback poison frog. Splash it back. We've got here, we'll have a look. There's got a few different colours on this one, so let's have a look. So you can see, we'll have a look at these two because they have both the colours. So this is the Splashback poison dart frog, also called Adelpobates galactonus, also known as the Splashback poison frog or the Splashback poison frog. These guys are another species of poison dart frog that are endemic to the southern Amazon basin in Brazil. So this species' natural habitat is tropical moist lowland forests, where it has been observed as high as 600 meters above sea level. And it seems to prefer forested habitats with large numbers of Brazil nut trees. And the eggs are laid on the ground, and after the eggs hatch, the adults carry the tadpoles to water, and scientists believe that they may actually include the water collected in Brazil nut husks. And luckily this frog's range also occurs in many protected areas, so they are considered least concern. So in terms of threats, as I mentioned, they're considered least concern, and they do have some tolerance for habitat disturbance. Though it remains widespread and locally common, it is threatened by habitat loss, and it has already disappeared from some areas because of deforestation. And also flooding caused by hydroelectric dams. That the species is relatively common in captivity and regularly bred, the wild population is typically still at risk of getting collected. So even though they breed well in captivity, it's one of them things. But these guys are actually relatively large for a poison dart frog. They get up to about 42 millimeters or about 1.7 inches. The best known variants of the species are the black and yellow and orange and red above, but they have very extremely variable colours, with some having a whitish mint or light blue underparts, some have a mottled or spotted pattern, and some almost being whitish, also known as the moonshine kind of one against for captive frog keepers, or yellow, orange or black, so quite a bit of variety there. It has been speculated that some of these morphs were actually different species, but genetic testing actually shows there's no really difference between them. And the distributions of these morphs do not follow a clear geographic pattern, as expected if they were different species. So they tend to just be different varieties, different colours that just come around, which is interesting. And scientists have actually cited this frog as an example while examining the cause of bright colours in these frogs. So a lot of these poison dart frogs are very bright coloured, and because it's believed to be aposematic, which means it warns predators and say, hey, you can't, if you eat me, I will poison you. So it's kind of a way to scare them off. However, studies have actually noted the two colour morphs, although very visually distinct, have largely the same profile of poison. And the scientists actually believe the coloration may not have to do with, have more to do with conspecific recognition, so recognising each other and from other species, but also recognising male and female, which rather than deterring predators. So it may be more complicated than just saying bright colours means don't eat me. It may be a little bit more complicated in these kind of situations. But yeah, that's another cool species we get to talk about. Let's have a look at the Zoopedia, see what we've missed out. Characteristic pickle black pattern, measuring 4 centimeters. They are one of the largest poison dart frogs, yep. The Greek name for this Ados was twin or brother in Bates, so it's basically twin walker or brother walker. I mentioned that. Genetic is the frog may produce special vibrations in its body to partially block the sounds of its own loud calls. That's another really interesting one there. Yeah, a couple different cool froggies there. So that's the Splashback poison frog. Next up, we have got the Summers poison frog, or it's called Ramamira summeri. So this is the Summers poison dart frog. So let's have a look at these guys. So let's see if we can get one in the light. Blinded by the light. Oh, that one looks cute. We'll have a look at you. I think you look adorable like that. So Ramamira summeri. So these guys are sometimes referred to as the Summers poison frog. So this is a species of poison dart frog found in central Huerta River drainage and also the Cozela Zoo National Park in central Peru. And before 2008, it was actually considered a subspecies of Ratamira fantastica, and it is sadly considered endangered, which we'll get into. So this species is actually one of the largest species of poison dart frog. It has a orange to black banded pattern and a large snout to vent length, with males and females not exhibiting sexual dimorphism, but in snout to vent length, but they do range between 15.5 millimeters and 20.4 millimeters, so that's between 1.5 to 2 centimeters. And the species possesses, you can see a black marking over its eye, extending past the trypanum, or the ear hole, giving it almost look like it's wearing a mask, which is quite cool. The species is also a Bayesian mimic of Rothabera variabilis, and while this species can copy the appearance of the species, it can be distinguished by its soft buzz call, which can be heard less than a meter away, and its dark mask carrying the tandem as well. So that's quite cool. In terms of its kind of habitat, so again, like most of the poison dart frogs, they are diurnal and are primarily terrestrial. They inhabit dry primary and secondary submontane forests that have been observed between 180 to 700 meters above sea level. And these guys, the females will lay their eggs in leaf litter in clutches of between 6 and 9, and after the eggs hatch, the male frog carries them in pools of water, 2 pools of water, including holes in trees or in the axils of the Fredibranca plants, so like bromeliads and things like that. So in terms of threat, they are sadly considered endangered because of quite considerable and ongoing habitat loss, which is wide, deforestation, clearing for farmland and agribusiness. They're also highly prized as a terrarium pet and have been captured for the pet trade. And while there was some legal export circa 2001, and it was also possible to rear the species in captivity, almost all the pet frogs currently held by humans are either illegal captures or delayed descendants of illegal captures. But the frogs range is actually sadly not found to include any national parks, but there is a couple parks near it, but sadly these species have not been found within the park, so hopefully maybe there could be a special park erected or something to help protect this population, or maybe even translocated there or something like that, just to make sure they live in a protected area. But yeah, that's another cool one there. That's the Summer's poison frog. We'll have a look at the Zoopedia, see if there's anything else. We mentioned that. Highly transferring pet. It was terrestrial. Yeah, we've pretty much covered most of that. So this is our last species of frog. We've got the Zimmerman's poison frog. So let's have a look at this guy. Exhibit camera. Really, really cool one here. Also got the Zimmermans. Look at them all here, just chilling. We'll have a look at you guys. Why not? Not really too much variation there, but we'll get into that. So the Zimmerman's poison frog, also known as formerly known as Dendrobates variabilis. These guys are a small species of poison dart frog distributed from northern Peru along the Andes up into the Rio Hogula drainage basin. So this species was named after Elke Zimmerman, which was a German zoologist who described this as a morph of the species Dendrodates vermiculatus, and it was formerly considered to be the same species, but now they're considered different. So in terms of adults, you can see they're quite characteristic by having a black spot on the tip of their snout and a black Y-shaped pattern on their back. The species body color ranges from yellow to green, and the body color terminates when the arms insert, with the limbs usually being blue with black spotted patterns. Throats are usually bright yellow, and the ventral side of the body is usually light blue. However, because Rhamphithia variabilis is a polymorphic species with quite high genetic diversity, there is a lot of patterns and colors that change depending on your location. And adults come in 2 morphs, striped or spotted morphs, with the striped morphs actually typically being found in lowland regions, whereas the spotted morphs are typically found along highland regions, and females are also significantly larger than the males. In terms of tadpoles, they're pretty typical for tadpoles. They have dark to slightly brownish bodies with incomplete wide dorsal gapes and emarginated oral discs, and this pale colour kind of changed to a black-green colour during metamorphosis. And their tail mostly brown to slightly opaque colours. They're not really too variable in that regard. But in terms of taxonomy, they are in the genus Rhanthomia, which is a monophyletic evolutionary group and is mostly closely related to the species Rhanthomia amazonia, though they could be divided into 4 separate species. In terms of habitat and distribution, they are native to South America and are mainly distributed in the western region of the Amazonian Orinocan lowlands, which is along northern Peru, Ecuador, western Brazil, and the southern Colombia region. And the average rainfall of its habitat habituates is about 250 millimeters, 2,500 millimeters, with a dry season between June and September. So while this dry season correlates with changes in parental and egg deposition behaviors, temperatures vary between 16 and 32. They tend to be on the lower end of the dry season. Adults have been found in secondary and ancient forests because of the presence of ideal oviposition sites, and individuals also been found in higher perches. So in terms of conservation, there are threatened things like habitat loss and logging, and also illegal pet trade, but that threatens all species, so they are considered actually data deficient. Okay, I'm going to go back there. Anyway, we'll carry on. In terms of the home range, they actually have a home range typically of about 31 square meters, and because these species exhibit male uniparental care, home ranges are less strongly associated with Patelomata availability and territoriality when it comes to other species that have both parents. And the male individuals are often observed far away from their reproductive sites, and due to their polygamous mating system, also less home range overlap between individual breeding pairs. So in terms of its diet, these guys tend to be omnivorous or cannibalistic as tadpoles, in addition to eggs and conservic tadpoles in the same, they'll eat the same thing. They also tend to feed on organic debris like small other eggs of frogs, small insect larvae, and other just organic detritus. But also as well, adult Arvarabilis tend to feed on fruit flies and termites and small beetles. So in terms of reproduction, which is probably most similar to most other species of dart frogs, reproduction occurs during the day and peaks after rain. Males initiate advertisement calls, and then they're approaching the female. When the female approaches, they kind of increase the frequency of those calls. Males usually call around suitable pyotelma, where once the female lays the egg, the male can fertilize them. Females typically lay between 2 to 6 eggs in the water, and they have a polygamous mating system, which means males and females mate randomly and polygamously, and they have little to no mate fidelity. So males will call from a boreal perches in the presence of female. The calling frequency increases as the male approaches the female. Calling only occurs when males attempt to attract females, and they kind of have like a low buzzing call, which is very, very low. And two males actually sometimes wrestle to determine dominance when it comes to conflict over the female. The female has the opportunity to fertilize the eggs first, and the subordinate male has a chance to fertilize the eggs after the dominant male. So they may actually, might get a chance, but typically the one who wins the fight gets the first go. So in terms of where they lay, they tend to breed in pyotelma, which are small pools of water caught in plant cavities. And using this actually reduces the risk of predation because of their scattered location. However, this limits the space for tadpoles to develop, and sometimes can even lead to cannibalism or interspecies competition. And they've found multiple different species that they can put them like bromeliads, but other things like Diphonobrancha and Heliconia, and they kind of find these little pools. But research actually found that adults avoid laying eggs with non-familiar tadpoles in these because they do not want to avoid them and place there themselves. One explanation is that the adults would attempt to feed the tadpoles with eggs, and they have been known to lay eggs, to feed those tadpoles. And unlike their close relatives, they actually lay the eggs just below water level to keep the eggs moisturized and have access to oxygen and things like that, which is interesting as well. And in terms of parental care, they do have uniparental care, so the females do not return to the site, though they do show kind of kinship with their own offspring. They often return to those ones as well, so the males kind of do all the work. There's also evidence that they may revisit, and sleeping, for adults revisiting and sleeping to the part-time within the home range. And because tadpoles are cannibalistic, the male parents oftentimes separates the siblings and puts them in their own little pool so they don't eat each other, which increases their fitness. And the tadpole transportation actions occurs about 10 to 15 days after being laid, and males can usually transport 1 to 6 tadpoles on their back. And the male frog approaches the water body, they'll actually almost jump at the back of the adult, mimicking an attack movement, which is quite interesting as well. But it's also quite cool as well, they have used chemical cues, so they can distinguish the presence of tadpoles through chemical cues, whether they can say cannibalistic or not. And researchers show that parents were choosing between clear water or water previously treated with cannibalistic tadpoles than to avoid the water in the absence of visual cues. So they are able to tell through chemicals that, this has actually got lots of cannibalistic tadpoles in there. I better not lay my eggs in there, otherwise they just get eaten. So that's another really cool thing as well. And males have distinct chemical cues on different species. So adults will avoid egg deposition with species that are in the same family, and the specific chemical molecule has not been identified, but they try to avoid laying them with other species that they're related to in the same other poison dart frog species, which is quite interesting. And these guys are a mimic, so they're a Bayesian mimic, and however they do have an extra nose spot, so they look very similar to try and mimic each other to avoid predation, of course, as we kind of mentioned that before. And these babies can be cannibalistic, so they do like to eat little babies, things like that. But yeah, another really, really cool species. We'll have a look at the Zoopedia to get a better look. Tadpoles can be cannibalistic, yeah, we mentioned that. Solid brown bodies, Calling, 2 miles. Yeah, we already mentioned all that. But yeah, another really cool species of dart frog. That's all 8 now of the poison dart frog pack. So that was all done by Lorby and Tosco DS. You know, the dream team making us some poison dart frogs. How can you not enjoy that? So next up we have got, this is a mod done by Leaf and Nicholas Lion Rider. So this is the Pygmy Pronghorn or Caprimyrix minor. So we'll have a look at the particular species. So there's the, is that the female? Yeah, that's it. We'll have a look at the male. Because the male is always the most interesting one in mammals, pretty much. So these guys are a genus, extinct genus of dwarf pronghorns that originated in North America during the Pliocene. The exact range is kind of unknown, but most fossils can be actually found to be dated about 11,000 years ago. So they went extinct with the megafauna at the end of the Ice Age. So in terms of the allocaprines, they were actually quite common during the Miocene, but they started during the late Miocene, they tended to decline. And the only really surviving species of the allocaprines is the modern pronghorn. So in terms of description, these guys are considered the smallest member of the group. They are recognized by having 2 upfront horns that are conical in shape. And these guys have been found in places such as Arizona, California, Florida, New Mexico, Texas, and Washington. The fossils have also been found in Mexico as well. Many species, fossils have been found in tar pits, especially like the La Brea tar pits, where this species has been found of Caprimyrix minor. And much like the living pronghorns that exist today, they seem to have lived in habitats that were a little bit more shaded and covered, so they could take refuge in, maybe have an ecology more similar to mouse deer or duikers. That's probably a good example. Though it is unknown exactly how they ate and interacted with each other, but there is speculated to have been quite similar in their ecology and things to, you know, the North American pronghorn. So in terms of its Caprimyrix, you can identify it from other species by its horn cores as well, in size and shape and of its teeth. There are some species that have been found and named, but it's kind of really hard. Some of them may not even be true. It's just one of them things. But the species that we have here, this is Caprimyrix minor. So this was actually discovered in La Brea tar pits in California, and it's been found at least as far east as the coast of Texas. And this is actually a really small one, so they stood about 60 centimeters tall at the shoulder and weighed about 10 kilograms. And it's unknown whether females had horns as well as males, and each horn usually has a pair of short, straight points that sprout out from a single base on either side of the head with 2 prongs, which is interesting as well. Yeah, they're quite a wide-ranging animal. So let's look at the females now, because why not? I don't know what she's up with her, but anyway, we'll just keep on keeping on. As I mentioned, there is a few different species. There was some species right from the Pliocene, and then you got some that's at the latest 11,000 years ago, which is the species Cystis minor. So in terms of behavior, it's thought that by some biologists, they lived in forest underbrush, where their small size would help them to hide. Some, as I mentioned, a Duiker and things like that. It's unlikely that they lived in open prairies, being so small. You know, they would have been easier to avoid prey if they just hide in more forested areas. And plus, America kind of opened up a bit, so that makes sense with their extinction. Though it's unknown why they went extinct. You know, they kind of bucked the trend because, you know, the American megafauna extinction that include the mammoths and the ground sloths and the mastodons, saber-toothed cats and American lions and all that. They all went extinct at the end of the Ice Age about 12,000 years ago. And this is one of the species that kind of got caught in the crossfire. But they're actually not, you know, a giant. They're Pygmy. So it's very interesting. A lot of their habitat must have changed. But yeah, it's always the age-old debate. Was it people? Was it climate change? Was it disease? There's even some talk of a meteor. Could really be anything, really. But yeah, it is one of those big debates. You know, what killed the megafauna at the end of the Ice Age? One of those big debates, anyway. But we're going to be moving on back from something extinct. This is also done by Leaf and Nicholas Lion Rider. We have got the red-flanked Duiker over here. So that's another really cool species. So the red-flanked Duiker, or Cyprophilus rutifarus, if you say that. So this is a species of small antelope that were found in Western and Central Africa as countries as far apart as Senegal and Sudan. And red-flanked duikers usually grow about 15 inches or 38 centimeters in height and about 31 pounds or 14 kilograms. So we kind of mentioned that, 12 to 14 kilograms. Their head is probably a blackish grey near the spine with a reddish brown body around their flanks, hence the name the red-flanked duiker. They have small white markings on their ears and snout, and a dark streak runs down the center of their face. There's also a tuft of black hair that kind of grows on their head there that can sometimes cover their horns. And their legs you see are bluish grey. And the sexes are pretty similar in terms of appearance, but males have short, backwards pointing horns that are about 9 centimeters long, with females being either hornless or having shorter horns. And both male and females have large preorbital glands above their eyes, on their snout, where it almost bulges from their cheek. And this is common in all members of the genus Ceroporus, but it's larger in red-flagged duikers compared to other species. So in terms of their distribution, they are found around West and Central Africa, as their range extends from Senegal and the Gambia to the west, to the Sudan and the Nile Valley to the east, and the main habitat is kind of open savanna woodlands, with the margins of forests, but also occur in river basins with elephant grass or thick scrubby vegetation such as cape bushes or tree acanthus. So these are interesting species. They are territorial and mainly solitary, with a single antelope or a pair occupying a small territory for about a month or a few months, and then move elsewhere. So the territory is marked with secretions from their preorbital gland, as we kind of mentioned before, and the duikers tend to be more active in early morning or shortly after dusk, which makes them crepuscular, and they move around while browsing and keep a sharp lookout for predators. And if they are startled, they lower their head and dive into the nearest dense part of vegetation. And they are prey for quite a few species. They are hunted by leopards, crowned eagles, and African rock pythons, but probably their biggest predator is man, as they are quite common for bushmeats. So these guys feed on leaves and flowers and the fruits that fall from trees, and also browse twigs growing up to about a meter. And favourite food species include the wild date, African peach, the Cape fig, the hog plum, the barwood, the African black plum, the African custard apple, the leaf flower, the monkey cola, and the ackee and the beechwood. So quite a few species they like. And they seem to act as important seed dispersers, so once they eat them and pass them through their guts and poop them out, they're in a completely new area, so it allows them to germinate there. So in terms of their breeding, well, actually that's the male there. We'll have a look at the baby while we'll talk about that there. So the red-flanked duikers mature at about 9 months of age, both male and female. The female comes to estrus once a year, and gestation period is about 8 months, and with a single offspring being born during the dry season or near the start of the wet season. So the newborn juvenile is about 1 kilogram, but quickly makes its way into concealing vegetation, and only really comes out when its mother comes up to nurse it. But immediately after birth, and when grooming its infant, the mother marks it with secretions from preorbital gland, claiming it as hers, and they're typically weaned at about 9 kilograms or 20 pounds, and there's typically after that no further parental involvement. So we'll have a look at the female, and then we will carry on with their status. So they are considered least concern. They're quite adaptable, and the removal of trees by logging and the conversion of natural habitat into more farmland and open savanna is actually increasing their range, and it's fairly common in areas in which it was found, though numbers are decreasing due to the severe hunting pressure. So the red-flanked duiker is actually one of the foremost common species of bushmeat on sale in the Republic of Guinea. It includes the Maxwell's duiker, the greater cane rat, and the bushbuck. However, there is a number of reserves and protected areas where they live, where they're less likely to be killed for meat, so that's where they are considered least concern. So that's another really awesome one there, nice protected species. So that's, as I mentioned, done by Leaf and Nicholas Lionrider. But next up we got one by Great Cakes Mod, always got to have a Great Cakes Mod feature in there. So let's have a look at the Asiatic lion. So we'll have a look at the male while he's sleeping. I think we'll actually have a look at the girls, and then we'll move on to him when he wakes up. So this is the Asiatic lion. So these guys are a lion population of the northern subspecies Panthera leo, and they had quite a wide range historically, living in Saudi Arabia, eastern Turkey, Iran, Mesopotamia, and into Pakistan and Bengal and central India. But since the turn of the 20th century, their range has been restricted to Gir National Park, as it was just quite sad. But they were originally considered kind of their own subspecies for Perseus. But in 2017, there was a lot of monophyletic morphological and molecular genetics found in there, and they're found to be quite similar to Barbary lions. However, some scientists continue to use the Perseus for the Asiatic lion, and they're definitely not a distinct species, but are definitely within that population. So they're closely related to the northern subspecies that include the extinct Barbary lion. In terms of how they got to be there, though, so the lions first left Africa about 700,000 years ago, and giving rise to Panthera fossilaris, and then later evolved into the cave lion, or Panthera splaya, which became extinct about 14,000 years ago. And genetic analysis show that P. splaya was a distinctive species and diverged about 500,000 years ago. And then the Pleistocene fossils that have been in kind of Arabia and things like that were kind of associated with, modern lions, but between 250,000 years ago, and then some even more recent as 70 to 10,000 years ago. And there is actually believed to have been a population of these lions living potentially in Southeast Asia that went extinct in Sri Lanka as well until about went extinct about 39,000 years ago. So they would have lived there during the height of the Ice Age. Let's see if the male's up now. No, he's still sleeping, so we'll watch the girl for a bit. Though genetic markers from captive and wild lions from Africa and India indicated that they were the main lineages, so there's kind of one lineage from Central to Northern Africa to Asia, one in Kenya, one in Southern Africa, and one in Southern and East Africa. So this first wave of lion expansion from East Africa to West Africa, and the second wave was kind of the early Holocene periods into Africa through East Africa. So the Asiatic lion is genetically closer to North and West African lions compared to the East and Southern African lions. And these two groups seem to have diverged between 186 to 128 million years ago. I mean, not million years ago, 1,000 years ago. And it's thought these guys may have remained connected to North and Central lions for gene flow, which was interrupted due to the extinction of lions in Western Eurasia and Middle East during the Holocene. So they would have been a lot of gene flow from, all these lions, but because of humans, and we've kind of chopped and changed the populations, we've kind of caused their gene flow to stop. But there's the male there. We'll get him while he's pooping, why not? In terms of characteristics, the Asiatic lion fur ranges in colour from a ruddy tawny colour, heavily speckled in black, to sandy to bluish grey, buffish grey, and sometimes with a silver sheen. Males typically you can see have only moderate mane growth at the top of their head, so their ears are always visible. The mane is scanty on the chest and throat, and it's only about 10 centimeters and 4 inches long. And they tend to have different shaped skulls, with the sagittal crest being more developed. And they also have divided interorbital foramen, while African lions only have one foramen. And the post-orbital area of these lions is also shorter, so there's some kind of difference between there. Males stand at a height of about 107 to 120 centimeters, or about 42 to 47 inches in height, and females are about 80 to 107 centimeters, or about 31 and a half to 42 inches. So it's kind of their size there. And typically they are a little bit smaller than large African lions, with adult males weighing about... An adult male Asiatic lion weighs about 160 kilograms, or 353 pounds on average, with the limit being about 190 kilograms, or 420 pounds, and a wild female weighs between 100 and 130, or 220 to 285 pounds. As mentioned, there is a lot of variation in their manes and things like that, but they tend to be a lot smaller than African lions. So in terms of distribution, in the Gir Forest, it's an area of about 1,412 kilometers that was designated as a sanctuary for the species, or for the subpopulation, in 1965. And it actually has the only habitat supporting them today, which is actually quite sad. But this, where they have forest remnants, where it's got tropical and subtropical broadleaf forests along the savanna, and it does provide variable habitat with fauna for these guys. So there's luckily a lot of areas kind of, as well. And is actually trying to establish more populations as well. They're trying to get into that. So the lion population was recovered back from the brink of extinction to about 411 individuals in 2010. And it's kind of actually been going. They're trying to expand new territories. And the most recent populations, I think, was about 650. That's the most recent population. We actually might check Wikipedia. That might have the latest one. So yeah, Asiatic lion. That's not right. But their population would have been quite a bit higher. Not quite a bit lesser, but believed to be the population now is about 650 to 2024, 25. They actually have also started swimming out to try and find new habitats as well. So they're really trying to expand. It's part of their conservation issues with the Asiatic lion that we get into. But our populations are increasing and they're leaving the park, but there's nowhere outside of the park to go. But their former range, during the Holocene, from about 6,500 years ago to possibly early 8,000 years ago, they did live in southeast Europe. And they would have been part of, in classical antiquity, so that's where you get a lot of lions from, Greek and Roman culture. They used to occur in, Middle East as well, in Saudi Arabia. And the last known lion that was actually killed in Iraq was in 1980. And it's kind of all kind of distinguished, and, all the populations from India and everything just kind of consolidated and then kind of went into the Gur National Forests. But in terms of the ecology, they are typically, males are solitary, but associated with the three males, then form a loose pride. Pairs of males rest and hunt and feed together and mark together. Females live in groups of up to about 12 other females, forming a stronger pride together with their cubs. And they share larger carcasses among each other, but seldom with males. And females and male lions are associated only a few days of mating, but really live and feed together. So based on radio telemetry, the average home range for a male lion varies between 144 to 230 square kilometres. Home ranges of females are smaller, about 67 to 85 kilometres as well, with coalitions of males kind of, containing one or more female prides. So there may be a couple prides within the male's territory. And in terms of their feeding ecology as well, they're active at twilight and night, and they often will hunt things like sambar, wild boar, and nilgai. And their typical preferred prey range is between 190 to 550 kilograms, irrespective of availability. Domestic cattle have been historically a main component of their diet in the Gur forest, but inside the national park, they will eat things like chital, sambar deer, nilgai, cattle, domestic water buffalo, and even wild boar. But the most common kill chital, which is only about 50 kilograms, probably because that's the only thing there. They prey on sambar deer when the latter descend from the hills during the summer, but outside the protected area where wild prey species don't occur, they will prey on water buffalo and cattle and even camels. They generally kill most prey less than 100 meters away from water sources, and they regularly visit specific sites to scavenge at dead livestock and things like that. And they also prey on mugger crocodiles in the areas of the Kalawasha Dam. Though in 1974, the populations of wild ungulates in the park was actually quite low at about 9,650 individuals. But during the decades, because of lots of conservation work, the populations have grown up to 64,850 in 2010. So there's lots of different chital, wild boar, and sambar and nilgai, different species that live in the park that they can eat a lot more of. So that means that's reduced a lot of competition and reduced a lot of them taking livestock. So now they're eating more wild food and less domestic livestock. So there's not that much killing of domestic livestock these days, which is good. They do on average kill between about 2,000 livestock annually between 2005 and 2009. So that's kind of what they kill, about 2,000 cows or 2,000 sheep and stuff like that a year. But we'll talk about their reproduction. So we'll have a look at the cute little baby while we do that. So in terms of reproduction, they mate foremost between October and November. Mating will last about 3 to 6 days, and during these days they usually do not hunt, but only drink water. So gestation lasts about 110 days, with litters comprising about 1 to 4 cubs. And the average interbirth period is about 24 months, unless cubs die due to infanticide by adult males, or because of disease or injuries. Cubs will then become independent at the age of 2 years old, and subadult males will leave their natal pride at the age of 3 and become nomads until they establish their own territory. So dominant males actually get to mate more frequently than their coalition partners, and actually there was a study carried out in December of 2012 to December of 2016. 3 females were observed switching mate partners in favour of the dominant male. Monitoring of more than 70 mating events showed that the females mated with males of several rivaling prides that shared their home range, and that the males are tolerant towards the same cubs. So only new males that entered the female territory would have killed those unfamiliar cubs. So infanticide is not as common as it's implied. And young females tend to mate foremost with males within their home ranges. The older females tend to go with the males on the periphery of their range. So in terms of their threats, they are currently as only population that are isolated in this little island, pretty much. So that an epidemic or a large forest fire could potentially wipe them into extinction. There's also poaching that's become a big issue as well. But luckily there's things like reliance on livestock is now not a thing, because there's a lot of more wild populations of ungulates that are helping them as well. There's also some that have died from the canine distemper virus, which has actually killed African lions as well. But also conflict with humans, they like to kill livestock, things like that. So there has been some lions killed in retaliation of that. But luckily, and there has been some people killed by lions, which is another big issue as well, which is really hard with the conservation of the species. We'll have a look at the male again. Where is he? I like this one. We'll have a look at you. But in terms of reintroductions, there's lots of effort to try and reintroduce into places. They have been trying to establish another populations to increase, to repopulate them to their former range, but also ensure their reproductive health, but also prevent outbreaks of epidemics. so trying to move them to different areas. And there has been lots of different areas trying to find areas, where they can go. But a lot of politics, like the Gujarat state officials, actually resist this relocation because the Gur sanctuary will actually lose its status as being the only world's only home for Asiatic lions, which is really silly. But there is a lot of efforts trying to, it's just politics, it loses its status of having the only Asian lions. But there's a lot of efforts to try and help them, move to different areas so they can repopulate and work in their, conservation, help them as well. There's efforts to reintroduce them into Iran from zoo populations, I believe, but also in captivity. They were bred a lot with African lions. They didn't really care too much about, keeping them pure. But they actually have been trying to identify individuals with high variability of Asiatic lions and try and breed them back as well. And there's been some important stock since. So the Asiatic Lion International Stud Book was actually established in 1977 with the North American Species Survival Plan. So there's lots of hybrids, but they have some, some are hybrid, some are pure. So it's really just trying to work that out and making sure that there is a, pure population. But in terms of culture, they are well represented. We'll have a look at this cute little animation though. They are well represented in culture, like in Southeast Asia as well. They're parts of Hindu mythology and things like that, and Neolithic people as well. The lion dance in Cambodia. In Europe as well, you hear them a lot of the Lion of Babylon, the Nemean lion, in Hercules's labours, and lots of they were a part of antiquity. So a lot of those times there's lots of cultural references of lions in Europe and Asia, but also in Southeast Asia during that time, even though lions are not really common there now. But yeah, that's a really cool part of their history and conservation. And yeah, really, really cool to talk about these guys again. And another great mod by Great Cakes Mod. So I think this is a great place to finish. So as again, that's the Poison Dart Frog pack done by Lorby and Tosco DS. We've also got Leaf and Nicholas Ryan Rider making us some awesome ungulate mods, and then we've got Great Cakes, knocking it out of the park with this Asiatic lion. So yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.